The cry of desperation. The endless void of space hummed softly as the Horizon Sentinel, Earth's most advanced deep space listening station, drifted near the edges of human-occupied space. Inside, Specialist Elena Carter sat at her console, her fingers tapping idly against the armrest of her chair. It had been months since anything interesting had come through the station's long-range receivers. "Another quiet day," muttered Elena, sipping lukewarm coffee. Suddenly, the console in front of her blinked to life. A soft alarm buzzed, indicating an incoming signal. Frowning, she adjusted her headset and leaned forward. The signal was faint, garbled, and nearly drowned out by the background noise of the galaxy. "Signal detected," she announced, her voice steady despite the sudden surge of adrenaline. Within moments, her colleagues gathered around, their expressions mirroring her own mix of curiosity and apprehension. The signal wasn't human. Its frequency and structure were unlike anything they had encountered before. "Run it through the translator," her supervisor, Commander Raj Patel, ordered. Elena's fingers danced across the controls, isolating the signal and feeding it into the translation software. The room fell silent as they waited. The garbled sound slowly resolved into a haunting voice. "This is a distress call. Our world is gone. The Koros are coming. To anyone hearing this, help us, please." The voice cracked with desperation, the final word barely audible before the signal ended abruptly. The room remained silent, the weight of the message sinking in. "Koros?" one of the technicians asked, breaking the tension. "What are Koros?" Commander Patel's face was grim. "We don't know. But if they can destroy a civilization advanced enough to send a signal like that, they're not to be taken lightly." Elena replayed the message, her mind racing. It wasn't just the words. It was the raw emotion behind them. Whoever had sent this wasn't lying. They were terrified. "Do we know where it's coming from?" Patil asked. "Triangulating now," another technician replied, his hands moving swiftly. A star chart appeared on the main display. A glowing red dot marked the source of the signal. "That's deep into uncharted space," Patil noted, rubbing his chin. "Far beyond any of our colonies." Elena hesitated before speaking up. "Sir, if we don't respond, no one else will. They reached out to us for a reason." Patil sighed, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. Humanity had earned its reputation as Deathworlders, resilient and tough, shaped by a harsh, unforgiving planet. But that reputation also made them feared. Few alien species ever willingly contacted humans. "Patch this through to Central Command," he said finally. "They'll want to decide." As the message was sent, the room buzzed with speculation. Who were the senders? What were the Koros? And why had they chosen to contact humanity, of all species? Hours later, the reply came. "Dispatch a fleet. Investigate. Protect Earth's interests at all costs." Patil relayed the orders, and within days, humanity's finest warships were mobilized. The fleet's flagship, the Erebus, led the way, its sleek black hull bristling with weaponry. Elena watched from the viewing deck of the Horizon Sentinel as the ships disappeared into the darkness of space. A sense of foreboding settled over her. "Do you think they'll make it in time?" she asked quietly. Patil, standing beside her, didn't answer immediately. "I don't know," he admitted, "but if anyone can face this, it's the Deathworlders." As the fleet sped toward the source of the signal, the message played on a loop in their minds, a haunting cry for help from a civilization on the brink of extinction. And far beyond the edge of known space, the Koros stirred into the unknown. The Erebus sliced through the dark expanse of space like a shadow, its engines humming with restrained power. Behind it, a dozen ships of the Deathworlder fleet followed in perfect formation. Each vessel was armed to the teeth, a testament to humanity's survival instinct in a galaxy that seemed to want them dead. Captain Darius Kane stood on the command deck of the Erebus, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. the faint glow of the stars outside reflected in his sharp, calculating eyes. "Status report," he commanded. Commander Lucia Voss, his second-in-command, stepped forward. "Fleet is holding steady, sir. We'll reach the coordinates of the distress signal in approximately 8 hours." Kane nodded, his gaze fixed on the holographic star map projected before him. The signal's origin was marked by a pulsing red dot, situated in an uncharted sector of space. "What do we know about this region?" he asked. Voss hesitated. "Not much, sir. Scans indicate sparse systems with minimal stellar activity. No signs of established civilizations." "That's what worries me," Kane muttered under his breath. He turned to the ship's science officer, Dr. Elena Marlowe. "Anything on the Quaros?" Marlowe shook her head, frustration evident in her expression. "Nothing in our archives. Either they're new, or they've been exceptionally good at staying under the radar." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. For a species capable of annihilating an advanced civilization, the lack of information was troubling. As the hours passed, tension grew. The crew busied themselves with preparations, double-checking weapon systems, calibrating shields, and reviewing emergency protocols. No one spoke about the looming uncertainty, but it hung in the air like a storm cloud. In the mess hall, Lieutenant Samara Blake sat with a group of Marines, their faces unusually serious. "Anyone else got a bad feeling about this?" one of them muttered, breaking the silence. Blake smirked, though it didn't reach her eyes. "What? A distress call from unknown aliens in uncharted space doesn't scream routine mission to you?" The group chuckled nervously. "We've faced worse," another Marine said, trying to sound confident. "Remember the Thalaxian siege? They called us monsters, but we saved their hides." "Yeah," Blake said, her voice dropping. "But this time, we don't even know what we're up against." Back on the command deck, the ship's AI, designated Helios, broke the silence. "Captain Kane, I've detected residual energy signatures near the signal's origin. It appears to be the aftermath of a large-scale battle." Kane's jaw tightened. "How recent?" "Approximately 3 weeks ago," Helios replied. "Casualties?" "Extensive. No signs of survivors in the immediate vicinity." The bridge fell silent. Kane turned to Voss. "Prepare the fleet for potential hostilities. I want all ships on high alert." "Yes, sir," Voss said, relaying the orders. As they approached the signal's coordinates, the fleet slowed. The void ahead seemed darker, almost oppressive, as if the stars themselves were hiding. "Visual feed coming online," Helios announced. The main display flickered to life, revealing a debris field that stretched for kilometers. Twisted metal fragments floated aimlessly, the remnants of massive ships. Some were scorched and blackened, others sheared clean in two. "Magnify," Kane ordered. The image zoomed in, revealing alien vessels unlike anything humanity had seen before. Their designs were elegant, almost organic, now marred by the scars of battle. "Any life signs?" Voss asked. "None," Helios replied. "But there's something else." "What is it?" Kane asked sharply. Helios hesitated, a strange trait for an AI. Energy readings indicate a faint signal deeper within the debris field. It's similar to the distress call, but weaker. "Could be survivors," Marlowe suggested. "Or a trap," Voss countered. Kane considered their options for a moment. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now. Helm, take us in. Slowly. All ships maintain formation and be ready for anything." The fleet inched forward, weaving carefully through the debris. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. As they neared the source of the faint signal, something large loomed ahead. A massive alien vessel, half buried in the wreckage, came into view. Its hull was riddled with holes, and strange glyphs glowed faintly along its surface. "That's the source," Helios confirmed. "Scan for entry points," Kane ordered. As the scanners worked, Marlowe frowned at her console. "I'm picking up something odd." It's like the ship is alive. What do you mean? Kane demanded. Before she could answer, a sudden surge of energy erupted from the alien vessel. The Erebus shuddered, alarms blaring as the bridge was bathed in red light. "Shields up," Voss shouted. "It's not an attack," Helios said. "The energy is a pulse, a message." On the display, alien symbols flashed briefly before resolving into words. "You are not safe." The crew stared at the screen, the weight of those 4 words sinking in. "What the hell have we just walked into?" Kane whispered. The fleet hung in the void, their engines humming softly, as the message repeated, an ominous warning from the edge of the unknown. Shadows of the unknown. The Erebus floated silently near the alien wreck, its sleek black hull illuminated by the faint glow of the strange glyphs on the alien vessel. The Deathworlder fleet maintained a tight formation, their weapons primed and shields at maximum. The ominous message still lingered on the bridge's main display. "You are not safe." Captain Kane stood at the center of the bridge, his jaw set and his mind racing. "Helios, analyze that pulse again. I need to know what we're dealing with." The ship's A replied immediately. "Captain, the energy pulse was not hostile. It appears to be a warning, possibly automated. The signal's composition is designed to be universally understood, blending mathematics, visuals, and a form of neural imprinting." Kane turned to Dr. Marlowe, the ship's science officer. "Neural imprinting." Marlowe's brow furrowed. "It's a way to bypass language barriers." The message was meant to evoke a feeling. Fear. Commander Voss folded her arms. "It's working." "Captain." Helios interrupted. "There's more. I've detected faint power surges within the alien ship. Systems are still partially active." Kane's gaze shifted to the massive, broken vessel on the screen. "Any signs of life?" "None, sir. But the power signatures are concentrated around what appears to be a central chamber." "Could be survivors," Voss suggested cautiously. "Or whatever wiped out the Quaros," Marlowe countered. The bridge fell silent, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on everyone. Finally, Kane made his decision. "Prepare a boarding team," he ordered. "Dr. Marlowe, you're with me. Voss, you have the bridge. Keep the fleet on high alert. If we're not back in 2 hours, we come get you," Voss finished. Kane gave her a small smile. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." The boarding party consisted of Kane, Marlowe, and 6 Marines in full combat gear. They stood in the Erebus hangar bay, the hum of the ship's systems filling the air. The Marines double-checked their weapons, their faces grim but focused. "Stay sharp," Kane said as he secured his helmet. "We don't know what's waiting for us in there." The boarding shuttle detached from the Erebus and drifted toward the alien vessel. The wreck loomed larger with every passing moment, its surface a twisted landscape of scars and glowing glyphs. Inside the shuttle, Marlowe studied the glyphs through the viewport. "These markings, they're not decorative. They're functional, part of the ship's systems." "Like circuits?" Kane asked. "More like a language. The ship itself might be trying to communicate." The Marines exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. The shuttle docked with a jagged breach in the alien vessel's hull, its magnetic clamps anchoring it in place. The airlock hissed open, revealing the dark interior of the alien ship. "Helmets on," Kane ordered. "Helios, keep a link open." The team stepped into the alien ship, their lights cutting through the darkness. The interior was massive, with corridors that curved organically, like the veins of a living creature. Strange, faintly glowing filaments lined the walls, pulsing softly as if alive. "Readings are stable," Marlowe said, her scanner in hand. "Atmosphere is thin but breathable. No toxins detected." "Then why does it feel like we're being watched?" one of the Marines muttered. "Focus," Kane said, his voice calm but firm. The team moved cautiously through the corridors, their boots echoing faintly on the metallic floor. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hum of the ship's systems. As they approached the central chamber, the glowing filaments grew brighter, their pulses quickening. "This place is reacting to us," Marlowe said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's alive in some way." "Let's hope it's friendly," Kane muttered. The team reached a massive door, its surface covered in intricate glyphs that shifted and flowed like liquid. "Helios, can you open this?" Kane asked. "Working on it, Captain," the AI replied through their comms. "The mechanism is complex, but I believe I can override it." The door began to emit a low hum, the glyphs glowing brighter. Slowly, it slid open, revealing the central chamber. Inside, a massive crystalline structure floated in the air, suspended by beams of light. The chamber was bathed in an eerie blue glow, and the air seemed to hum with energy. "What is that?" Marlowe whispered, her eyes wide. "It looks like a core," Kane said. The crystalline structure pulsed, and suddenly, the glyphs on the walls lit up in unison. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language none of them recognized. Yet somehow, they understood. "You should not have come." The Marines raised their weapons, their fingers tightening on the triggers. "We mean no harm," Kane said, his voice steady. "We're here to help." The core pulsed again, and the voice replied, "Your help will bring only death. Leave while you still can." Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The glowing filaments along the walls began to writhe, and the chamber was filled with a deafening roar. "Captain, we've got movement," one of the Marines shouted. From the shadows of the chamber, strange, shifting shapes began to emerge. They moved with unnatural fluidity, their forms constantly changing, as if they were made of living smoke. "Fall back," Kane ordered. The team retreated toward the corridor, their weapons firing bursts of light into the advancing shades. The projectiles passed through the creatures harmlessly, their forms reforming instantly. "Helios, we need extraction, now," Kane shouted into his comms. The crystalline core pulsed one final time, and the voice spoke again. "You cannot fight what is already here." As the team fled back toward the shuttle, a single thought burned in Kane's mind. They had walked into something far worse than they had imagined. The unseen enemy. The Erebus was a fortress in the void, its crew anxiously monitoring the boarding team's retreat through the alien vessel. The bridge was tense, with Commander Voss standing in Kane's place, her sharp eyes fixed on the monitors. "Team Bravo, status report." Voss barked into the comms. Kane's voice came through, strained but steady. "We're falling back. Encountered hostiles, non-corporeal entities. Our weapons are useless against them." "Non-corporeal." The word sent a chill through Voss. "Understood. Shuttle Bay is prepped for your return. We'll cover your extraction if needed." "Prepare for anything," Kane added. "This isn't just an abandoned wreck. It's a trap." Inside the alien vessel, the team raced through the corridors, their lights barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. The strange, smoke-like entities were relentless, their movements erratic but purposeful. "Marines, cover the rear," Kane ordered. The Marines formed a line, their weapons blazing with suppressive fire, but every shot passed harmlessly through the advancing creatures. "They're not slowing down," one Marine shouted, his voice tinged with panic. Dr. Marlowe clutched her scanner, her fingers flying over the controls. "They're energy-based. These entities aren't physical. They're feeding off the ship's core and the glyphs." "There." The ship shuddered violently, cutting her off. The glowing filaments along the walls writhed like agitated snakes, their light flickering ominously. "Keep moving," Kane urged. "Helios, can you disrupt these things?" The AI's voice responded with urgency. "Negative, Captain. Their energy signatures are too complex. However, I'm detecting a potential vulnerability in the core. If we can destabilize it, the entities may dissipate." Kane gritted his teeth. "Options. Detonating the core is risky," Helios explained. The resulting blast could destroy the alien vessel and potentially damage the Erebus if we're too close. Kane glanced back at the approaching creatures. Their speed was increasing, their shapes growing larger and more menacing. "We'll worry about that later," he muttered. "Marlowe, you heard Helios. Can we destabilize the core remotely?" Marlowe's eyes widened. "Not from here. Someone would need to go back to the chamber and manually overload the core." The team fell silent for a split second, the weight of the decision bearing down on them. "I'll do it," Kane said firmly. "No way," one of the Marines protested. "You're the captain. If anyone's staying, it's..." "Enough," Kane snapped. "This isn't a debate. Get to the shuttle and prep for immediate evac. That's an order." The team hesitated, their loyalty and fear clashing. Finally, Voss's voice came through the comms. "Captain, you're not doing this alone. Sending reinforcements isn't an option. But I'm not losing you today." "Understood, Commander," Kane replied softly. The team reached the shuttle bay, but Kane didn't follow them aboard. Instead, he turned back toward the corridor leading to the core chamber. "Kane," Marlowe called after him, her voice breaking. "Get to the Erebus, Doctor," Kane said without turning around. "And tell Voss to keep the fleet ready for anything." Before she could protest further, the airlock sealed, and the shuttle launched back toward the Erebus. Kane moved swiftly through the alien ship, retracing his steps toward the core chamber. The creatures were everywhere now, their forms twisting and merging with the ship's walls. "Helios, guide me," Kane said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Follow the glowing filaments, Captain. They're leading you back to the core." Kane's steps quickened as the ship's structure seemed to shift around him, the walls warping and bending as if alive. The filaments pulsed brighter, guiding him toward the chamber. When he reached the massive door, it slid open without resistance, revealing the crystalline core. It pulsed rhythmically, the light beams suspending it flickering erratically. "Helios, what do I do?" Kane asked. "Access the panel on the left," the AI instructed. "You'll need to overload the energy conduits feeding the core. Once destabilized, the entities should dissipate, but you'll have less than a minute to escape before detonation." Kane moved to the panel, his hands working quickly. The glyphs shifted and rearranged themselves under his touch, as if resisting his efforts. "Hurry, Captain," Helios urged. "They're closing in." The room began to darken as the entities poured into the chamber, their forms swirling around the core like a storm. Kane activated the final override, and the core's light intensified, growing blindingly bright. The entities shrieked, a sound that resonated deep in Kane's mind, shaking him to his core. "Detonation in 60 seconds, Helios announced. Kane turned and ran, the corridors trembling as the ship's systems began to collapse. The filaments writhed violently, their light fading with each passing second. The shuttle bay was just ahead, but the path was collapsing behind him. Kane leaped over a crumbling section of the floor, his lungs burning with effort. "Open the airlock," he shouted into his comms. The Erebus responded instantly, the shuttle's doors sliding open just as Kane dove inside. The pilot gunned the engines, and the shuttle rocketed away from the alien ship. Behind them, the vessel erupted in a massive explosion, a brilliant light consuming it entirely. As the shuttle docked with the Erebus, Kane collapsed into a seat, his chest heaving. "Report," Voss demanded over the comms. "The core's gone," Kane replied. "And so are those things." But as he looked out the viewport, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something darker was still out there, waiting. The shadows that linger. The destruction of the alien vessel should have brought relief to the crew of the Erebus, but the bridge was far from calm. The aftermath of the explosion painted a haunting picture, a field of debris glowing faintly against the void, as if the remnants of the ship refused to fade entirely. Commander Voss stood at the viewport, her arms crossed tightly. "Status report," she ordered, her tone clipped. Helios's voice responded. "The alien vessel has been neutralized." Energy readings have dropped to negligible levels. However, Voss turned sharply. However, what? Helios hesitated, a rare occurrence for the AI. Residual anomalies detected in the debris field. I am unable to identify their nature. Voss's jaw tightened. She tapped her comm. Kane, report to the bridge. Kane arrived moments later, his face still pale from the ordeal. What's going on? Voss gestured to the screen. Take a look. The display showed the debris field, but something was wrong. The shards of the alien ship weren't drifting apart as expected. Instead, they hovered unnaturally, forming vague shapes that seemed to flicker in and out of focus. Helios? Kane asked, unease creeping into his voice. The debris is exhibiting properties inconsistent with physical matter. Helios explained. Energy patterns resemble the entities we encountered earlier, albeit weaker. Kane's eyes narrowed. You're saying those things survived? Uncertain, Helios replied. But they are not entirely gone. The tension on the bridge was palpable as Voss paced back and forth. Suggestions. Kane leaned against the console, his mind racing. If the entities are energy-based, they might be reforming. The core was their anchor, but without it, they're fragmenting. And if they manage to stabilize? Voss asked, her tone grim. Then we're back where we started, Kane admitted. Only this time, they'll be angrier. The crew quickly mobilized. Drones were launched into the debris field, their sensors scanning for anomalies. The monitors displayed live feeds, showing fragments of glowing energy darting between the wreckage. They're clustering, one technician reported, like they're trying to rebuild something. Not on my watch, Voss muttered. She turned to Helios. Can we neutralize them before they regroup? Helios processed the question for a moment. A targeted EMP pulse could disrupt their energy signatures. However, the pulse would also temporarily disable the Erebus's systems. Voss didn't hesitate. Prepare the EMP. We'll deal with the consequences later. As the Erebus prepared for the pulse, the glowing anomalies became more aggressive. The drone's feeds showed tendrils of light lashing out, disintegrating the machines one by one. We're out of time, Kane said. If we wait any longer, they'll reform into something worse. Voss nodded. Helios, initiate the EMP countdown. EMP activation in 30 seconds, Helios announced. The bridge lights dimmed as power was rerouted. Outside, the anomalies grew brighter, their movements frantic as if sensing the impending threat. 15 seconds, Helios counted down. The crew braced themselves, tension thick in the air. Kane watched the viewport, his fists clenched. 3, 2, 1. The EMP pulse surged outward, a ripple of energy that silenced the void. The anomalies flickered violently, their shapes collapsing into nothingness. The Erebus went dark, the hum of its systems replaced by an eerie silence. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Then, one by one, the ship's systems began to reboot. The lights flickered back on, and the crew let out a collective breath. Status? Voss asked. Helios's voice returned, calm but firm. The anomalies have been neutralized. No energy signatures remain. Kane exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Let's hope it stays that way. As the Erebus resumed its course, the crew began repairs and debriefings. But in the back of everyone's mind, a lingering question remained. Was this truly the end, or just the beginning of something far more dangerous? Out in the void, the stars seemed to shine a little dimmer, as if warning of the battles yet to come. The return of the unknown. The Erebus was a ship that thrived under pressure. Its crew, hardened by countless encounters with the galaxy's most dangerous phenomena, worked tirelessly to restore full functionality after the EMP pulse. Yet, an uneasy stillness lingered aboard. The silence felt unnatural, as if the void itself held its breath. Commander Voss stood at the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. The Erebus was heading back to the Galactic Alliance outpost, carrying vital data about the alien anomalies they had encountered. But the victory felt hollow. Kane entered, holding a datapad. Systems are stable, but the crew's on edge. It's like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Voss didn't look at him. Are we safe, Kane? Truly safe? He hesitated. The EMP wiped out the anomalies, but we still don't know what they were or where they came from. For all we know, this could just be a piece of something much bigger. Helios's voice broke the tension. Commander, I am detecting a faint energy signature approximately 2.3 light-years away. It matches the anomaly's patterns before their activation. Kane froze. You're saying there's another one out there? It appears so, Helios confirmed, and the signal is increasing in intensity. Voss turned sharply. Helm, alter course. Set a trajectory toward the source. Kane frowned. Are we really doing this again? We barely survived the last encounter. Voss's expression hardened. If we don't investigate, someone else will. And they might not be as lucky as us. The Erebus sped through hyperspace, its crew tense but determined. As they approached the signal, the source became clear. A derelict space station, massive and ancient, floating lifelessly in the void. It looks abandoned, Kane observed, studying the holographic display. Looks can be deceiving, Voss replied. Helios chimed in. The station is emitting energy signatures identical to the anomalies. I am also detecting residual traces of life forms, but they are faint and erratic. Voss made her decision. Prepare an away team. Kane, you're with me. The shuttle docked with the station, its lights piercing the oppressive darkness. The air inside was cold and thin, the remnants of a long-dead civilization, evident in the decayed structures and shattered machinery. It's like a tomb, Kane muttered, his voice echoing. Voss led the way, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. Stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with. As they ventured deeper, the walls began to shift. Strange symbols glowed faintly, and a low hum filled the air. Helios, Voss called over the comms. What's happening? The station's systems are activating, Helios replied. The energy readings are increasing exponentially. Kane stopped suddenly. Did you hear that? The team froze, listening. A faint whispering sound echoed through the corridors, like voices speaking in an ancient forgotten language. The whispering grew louder, forming words they could almost understand. It was a warning, and a plea. Leave, or awaken. The Harbinger. Kane's face paled. Commander, I don't think we're supposed to be here. Before Voss could respond, a burst of light filled the corridor. A glowing figure emerged, its form shifting and unstable, resembling the anomalies they had destroyed. It spoke in a voice that reverberated in their minds. Why have you come? You disrupt the balance. Voss stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. We came to understand. Your kind attacked us. We had no choice but to defend ourselves. The figure tilted its head, as if contemplating her words. You are not ready. The Harbinger stirs, and your actions hasten its rise. The light around the figure began to intensify, and the team shielded their eyes. What is the Harbinger? Voss demanded. The figure's voice grew faint. A force beyond your reckoning. It consumes, adapts, and evolves. Your Deathworlder strength will be tested, and found wanting. With that, the figure dissipated, leaving behind a pulsating orb of energy. What do we do with that? Kane asked warily. Voss stared at it for a moment. We take it. If it's connected to the Harbinger, we need to understand it before it's too late. As the team returned to the Erebus, the station began to collapse, its ancient walls crumbling into the void. The orb was secured in a containment field, glowing ominously. Back on the bridge, Voss watched the station's remnants vanish from the sensors. Helios, what's the status of the orb? It is stable for now, Helios replied. But its energy levels are rising slowly. I recommend extreme caution." Voss nodded. "Kane, prepare a report for the Alliance. They need to know what we're dealing with." Kane hesitated. "And if the Harbinger really is out there?" Voss's gaze hardened. "Then we'll do what Deathworlders always do, fight to survive." The Erebus set course for the Galactic Alliance, carrying with it the ominous warning of the Harbinger. The crew knew they were heading toward an uncertain future, but they also knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The Harbinger awakened. The Erebus reached the Galactic Alliance headquarters in record time, carrying the ominous orb and the grim warning from the ancient station. The mood on the ship was tense. Every crew member knew they were on the brink of something monumental and possibly catastrophic. Commander Voss stood in the conference room, the orb locked in a secure containment field behind her. Representatives from the Alliance, a mix of alien species and human delegates, watched her with unease. "This is what we recovered," Voss began, gesturing to the orb. "It's connected to the anomalies that attacked us, and it came with a warning." The alien ambassador, a feathered creature named Scrubble, leaned forward. "A warning? Of what?" Voss hesitated, then spoke. "The Harbinger, a force described as unstoppable, adaptive, and beyond our reckoning. According to the entity we encountered, our actions have accelerated its awakening." The room erupted in murmurs, but a booming voice silenced them. Admiral Jarek, a grizzled human, stood. "What does this Harbinger want?" "Domination. Destruction." Kane, standing beside Voss, spoke up. "It's unclear, but the entity suggested it feeds on chaos and conflict. If it's truly awakening, it could pose a threat to every species in the galaxy." As discussions continued, the orb began to glow brighter, pulsing with energy. Helios's voice crackled over the comms. "Commander Voss, energy levels within the containment field are rising exponentially. I recommend immediate evacuation of non-essential personnel." Before Voss could respond, the orb shattered the containment field, unleashing a wave of light that engulfed the room. Delegates screamed as their minds were flooded with images, planets consumed by darkness, fleets torn apart, and a figure of unimaginable power emerging from the void. The light receded, leaving everyone stunned. Voss clutched the table, her voice steady but urgent. "Helios, status." The eye's voice was grim. "The orb has transformed into a beacon. It is emitting a signal across the galaxy." Scrubble's feathers bristled. "A signal? To whom?" Helios' reply sent chills through the room. "To the Harbinger." The Alliance's fleet was mobilized within hours, but panic spread as reports of anomalies flooding nearby sectors poured in. The Erebus took the lead, its crew prepared for the worst. As they entered the epicenter of the signal, the Harbinger's presence became undeniable. A massive, shadowy entity loomed in the void, its form shifting and undulating like a living nightmare. It radiated power, its very presence causing systems to falter and minds to waver. "Visuals on screen," Voss commanded, her voice calm despite the fear gripping the bridge. The Harbinger appeared on the display, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. A voice echoed through the comms, ancient and cold. "You have awakened me. Now you shall face oblivion." The Erebus and the Alliance fleet opened fire, unleashing everything they had. The void lit up with explosions, but the Harbinger absorbed the energy, adapting and growing stronger. "It's not working," Kane shouted over the chaos. "It's feeding off our attacks." Helios spoke urgently. "Commander, the Harbinger's core is exposed during its adaptation phases. Targeting the core may destabilize it temporarily." Voss nodded. "Helm, bring us in close. Gunnery, focus all fire on the core." The Erebus charged forward, weaving through the chaos of battle. The Harbinger lashed out, sending tendrils of energy that tore through ships like paper. But the Erebus held firm, its crew pushing beyond their limits. As the Harbinger's core flared, Voss shouted, "Now, fire everything we've got." The ship's weapons unleashed a devastating barrage, striking the core and causing the Harbinger to reel back. For a moment, it seemed the battle was won. But the Harbinger's voice returned, louder and more menacing. "You delay the inevitable, I will consume all." Realizing they couldn't destroy the Harbinger outright, Voss made a bold decision. "Helios, can we use the beacon's energy to trap it?" The AI responded. "Theoretically, yes, but it will require the Erebus to remain at the center of the containment field." Kane's eyes widened. "That's a suicide mission." Voss's voice was resolute. "Not if we get out in time. Helios, prepare the field." As the fleet provided cover, the Erebus moved into position. Helios activated the containment field, using the beacon's energy to trap the Harbinger within a vortex of light. "Field is stable," Helios reported, "but it will not hold for long." Voss gave the order. "All hands, evacuate to escape pods." "Helios, set the Erebus to self-destruct once we're clear." The crew abandoned ship, their escape pods hurtling away as the Erebus glowed brighter, the containment field collapsing inward. The Harbinger roared, its form twisting as the ship exploded, sealing it within the vortex. From their escape pods, the crew watched as the Harbinger was pulled into the void, its presence fading. The battle was over. For now. As the survivors regrouped, Voss addressed them. "We've won today, but the Harbinger is not gone. It's out there, waiting. And we'll be ready when it returns." The galaxy had been saved, but the cost was high. The Erebus was lost, and the crew knew they had only delayed the inevitable. But Deathworlders were nothing if not resilient. The Harbinger would return, but so would humanity's resolve.